Hello and welcome to Round 11 coverage of Grand Prix Minneapolis. Brian David Marshall here with Paul Rietzel, and we are going to get a chance to watch Ken Yukihiro at 10-0 versus...
9-0 still, right? Yeah.
What's that?
This is the time walk, so this is still, I think he's still at 9-0.
No, they're 10-0. This is round 11. Yeah.
Round 11.
It is both time walk and incorrect. So there's an Omen speaker to lead things off for Ken Yukihiro. Got a submerged boneyard there on turn one.
Love the submerged boneyard. Yeah, it's such a warm feeling when you have a two-color deck to be able to start on that submerged boneyard. You're so unlikely to have mana problems start the game, and then
to Omen speaker, and then to mirror image or Omen speaker on turn 3.
that's too much scrying.
Druid of the Cowl here for Alex Sittner. Let's see if he'll block an Omen speaker. A little freebie attack here from Ken Yukihiro. He does block, and Abnormal Endurance is the play for Ken Yukihiro. He takes down the Mana Accelerator. Oh, is that a Draconic Disciple?
These are what are known as free roll attacks here from the Omen speaker, right? He's not interested in blocking with it, so he's saying, I'm just going to keep attacking with it. And if Alex blocks, fine. Maybe I have a trick, maybe I don't, but no reason to not attack.
Oh, boy, but right up to a turn 4 Thornhide Wolves for Alex Sittner. You know, his first Mana Accelerant died. His second one lived. Aven Windmage, though, is unconcerned and just flies over for 2. And Mirror Image copies the Aven Windmage. Ken Yukihiro also felt he had scryed enough.
Yeah, we mentioned the Thornhide Wolves. It's a tough sizing, for this format. A lot of the common removal doesn't deal with it. You really need something like a Lich's Caress to be able to handle it cleanly. And Ken's creature's pretty small, so going to need to figure out what to do about that Thornhide Wolves.
Tormenting voice there for Alex Sittner. There you look at Ken Yukihiro. Ken, someone I could tell you is on my Hall of Fame ballot that I'm submitting this year. 4 Pro Tour top 8s. Each of those 4 Pro Tour top 8s, he came in with a completely revolutionary constructed deck. Mm-hmm. Did something that nobody else in the field did. Played with cards nobody else in the room played with. Someone who's very, very high on my list, and it's been just the next wave of great Japanese Magic players.
I can't wait for Magic Hall of Fame Twitter. That's my favorite time of the year.
There's a Doomed Dissenter from Ken Yukihiro. He's does a nice job of holding the ground, just sort of kind of pushing the what's on my to-do list. Thornhide Wolves, I'm going to do that tomorrow. Mm-hmm. I don't want to do that right now. You see he blocks, he gets a zombie. There's Alex Sittner's stats. You see 2 Grand Prix top 8s. He was a member of Team Lingering Souls on the Pro Tour this year, or is, I should say. Someone who's been around for a long time, a Salt Lake City player.
Mm-hmm. And this is the game plan that Ken really kind of envisioned, right? Let me just kind of stall things out on the ground while I plink away in the air.
And then he does actually manage to find out an answer to at least one of those Thornhide Wolves with the Gearsmith Guardian. 5-5 against 4-5.
Right, and this is one of those key turns of the game, a turning point where if Alex just has to pass the turn back.
Would it be an inflection point?
It's a huge inflection point in this game. If Alex has to pass the turn back, not a good situation for him. He really wants either a removal for the Guardian or some sort of pump spell.
So, the first Aven Windmage was dealt with that Lightning Strike, but there is another Aven Windmage. It's a mirror image of it.
It does have the ability to make a 5/5 dragon, as you see with the Draconic Disciple. Tokens, dragon tokens against a blue deck is never something you can feel too comfortable about.
And here we see Macabre Waltz is going to just grow back. He just discards the Disciple. The Dissenter, and then replays an Aven Windmage. And Alex Sittner says, okay, I will add a dragon token to my collection of fatties here. Having done its mana accelerating job.
And make no mistake, despite having the larger board presence, the pressure is on Alex, and I think he realizes that to end this game quickly, right? Because that dragon is very vulnerable. There's any number of things in Ken's deck that could deal with it. So Ken wants to get the life total.
But how about now with a demanding dragon on top of it? Omen Speaker has more than done its job in that regard.
I take it back. The pressure's now on Ken here in the situation. Yeah, so that obviously demanding dragon, one of the rares in Core Set 2019 that really swings things. If you have a close game, it makes it not a close game.
I feel like that's the way these green-red ramp decks always work, where you're like, I'm under pressure, I'm under pressure, and then suddenly you're like, fatty, fatty,
Yes.
fatty, and the game just kind of plods slowly in your favor. And what is that card? I see a card in Ken Yukihiro. I'm trying to make it out, but I guess we'll find out soon enough.
And Ken with...
Oh, he's got a Plague Mare.
Oh, wow.
Not very exciting. That is about the worst Plague Mare. It's very blockable.
Yeah.
It kills nothing. And, wow, 10 in the air here.
He just
Ken
immediately
Yukihiro
takes
goes
it.
down to 1. There's a Centaur Courser. There's a Bristling Boar. And
Wow.
Ken is going to need a lot of instants and sorceries this turn if he wants to win.
He had this thing pretty well set up with the 2 Aven Wind Mages against just the Dragon token, but Demanding Dragon completely switches the math of this game. Yeah, as you mentioned, Ken's going to need a really kind of interesting combat step with multiple triggers of the Aven Wind Mage to be able to have a profitable block here.
All right.
Uh-oh.
Well, actually, so a Disperse here.
Yes.
Double block Demanding Dragon. Disperse the token. That's a bloodbath waiting to happen here.
Okay.
But he's going to go the other direction. He's going to double block the token. And he's going to murder the Demanding Dragons. That's even better. Although basically the same, but it feels better.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, Ken, I wouldn't say he's stabilized, but he certainly has a chance at least. Wow.
Oh, my God. And now a Vampire Sovereign off the top. Claws back 3 life and has a path to victory here.
And he's very close to having an attack. It looks like, just with the sizing of Alex's creatures, it's fairly risky. So what he's doing here is lining up blocks. It looks like, right, he's trying to figure out, if I attack with the Aven Wind Mage, do I have good blocks? And he judges, no, it's too risky to start attacking.
Wow. Ken Yukihiro deals with 2 dragons. Giant Spider comes down, and it's a Wind Reader Sphinx. And now suddenly things have really taken a turn here for Ken Yukihiro. And again, he's going to, can I attack this turn or not? He's at 4. He doesn't have, like, 1 Bristling Boar slipping past his defenses is just lethal here.
And Ken thinks that Alex has nothing. Ken figures that if Alex had anything in his hand, basically, that he would have cast it right now. And again, what he's lining up here are blocks, not attacks. He's trying to figure out, can I start to swing in with that Aven Wind Mage, that mirror image, which is a copy of Aven Wind Mage from earlier. And he's thinking, all right, do I have blocks that are not catastrophic?
Well, I think he has to swing with the Vampire if he wants to not lose his creature to the Giant Spider, right?
Right.
And I think he's going to ultimately decide to stay at home.
Right. Yeah. He gets to draw a card from the Wind Reader Sphinx, so any of the flyers that attacks will at least replace itself immediately with the trigger.
Wow.
But it doesn't look like a very profitable attack to me.
All right, Alex Sittner, can you swing this game back? Can you just push through that final 4 points of damage? 6 creatures versus 6 creatures. Wow, and he passes the turn back to Yukihiro. So basically, if Ken sees a creature in hand, he's just gonna swing with a flyer.
Now you enter a situation where he could risk potentially an attack, since
Wow.
the triggers could draw him into additional interaction.
Well, he attacks with 2 flyers here. He wants to guarantee getting a little bit of damage through. He draws 2 cards. He does draw 2 creatures, by the way.
2 pieces of interaction, absolutely.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. He
gigantic.
drew a Sift. That was the second card.
Well, Sift is an amazing draw
Yeah,
right
yeah.
now.
Yeah. Oh, and he drew a Disperse. Wow. So he's going to be able to play Doom Dissenter and Disperse here.
and now he has insurance for his home. Disperse is insurance against a catastrophic injury or anything of that nature.
Wow.
Alex, lined up, as the board states, does not have a lethal attack, is threatened to be attacked with lethal on the way back, and even if Alex has something like a pump spell, Ken has the backup Disperse. So we saw the way Wind Reader Sphinx took what was a close game and removed the closeness.
Yeah, we were talking about this Disperse earlier. They get a look at some of the players. 8-2 currently. in this tournament.
8-2, the bread and butter professional Magic player Grand Prix record, just on the outskirts of top 8
You
contention.
can't get to X and 4 if you're not X and 2.
That's right. It's not true, but it's close.
Oh, there's a Vinemare. And not a piece of interaction not a card that Ken Yukihiro can interact with.
And we're going to see if Ken goes for it here. It's pretty safe looking to go for this. Alex would need something like a shock in response to the Disperse in order to survive this turn. Does not have mana for something like Root Snare, so I think we're going to see him go for the kill.
Okay, here's the Disperse. Puts the Spider in hand. Attacks for 9 in the air. And that's going to be the game. Ken Yukihiro facing down a 5/5 dragon token and a demanding dragon was demanded an answer, and he found it in the form of Murder and a double block with 2 Aven Wind Mages, really showing off the power of both that card and Mirror Image.
You know what the all-star of that game, though, was?
Murder?
Was the Gearsmith Guardian, because Alex quickly got 2 Thornhide Wolves onto the board, and Ken does not have that many creatures from a sizing perspective that interact with the Thornhide Wolves. That held off those Thornhide Wolves the entire game and gained him so much virtual card advantage.
All right, so Centaur Courser versus Omen Speaker, and Ken doesn't go for the free attack there, and is going to play an Aven Wind Mage instead. You see a Titanic Growth in hand for Alex Sittner. Plays his second Centaur Courser.
But importantly, no 4th land.
I don't know. Centaur Coursers and a Titanic Growth can possibly get the job done. But here's a Mirror Image again. So 2 flyers on the board for Ken Yukihiro. Remember, we saw Abnormal Endurance in Game 1. And we're going to get a double block here. No Endurance, just... Oh, but he does have a Disperse, and when Alex Sittner goes for the Titanic Growth, Ken Yukihiro just sets him back to the Stone Age.
Yeah, so Ken there puts his mirror-imaged Aven Wind Mage into the graveyard, indicating that he was willing to pass priority, basically. Alex pauses and said, no, I didn't pass priority. I want to cast Titanic Growth. And then Ken says, oh, well, if in that case...
case, I'd like to blow you out.
In that case, why don't we not put this creature in the graveyard? Let's put all this stuff back in your hand. And now Ken with a massive tempo advantage.
Does find a Draconic Disciple, but now we have a Gearsmith Guardian for Ken Yukihiro's MVP from Game 1.
And all of a sudden, the blue-black deck is the one with the creature size and giving the red-green deck some trouble.
Even Omen Speaker getting in here and double block on the Gearsmith. And, Ken will always accept the 2-for-1 here.
Ugly, yeah. That's the ugly spot for Alex. And
oh, by the way, I'm going to Macabre Waltz that back. That card was good enough that I will go down a card to get my Gearsmith Guardian back.
Yeah, blue decks aren't supposed to get 5-mana 5/5s. That's part of the weakness, right?
And now cancel on the Spider. And Ken Yukihiro's looking to close this game out very quickly. Alex falls down to 2. There's a Guardian. Does he have an answer? No. Wow. Ken Yukihiro goes to 11-0. Very convincingly reaches for the slip, signs his name, says Ken Yukihiro.
Mm-hmm.
Here you go.
We saw him draft the deck, and he really highly valued those Aven Wind Mages, right? He wanted those over Divinations. He wanted to play that tempo style. We saw it work twice really well there.
But again, it was interesting. When he made those picks, he had already had the Wind Reader Sphinx, and we did see him every time we've seen him now, twice in the Future Match area with his deck, just working that Wind Reader Sphinx for cards and just drowning his opponents with all his tempo plays and card advantage.
Great spot to make this top 8.
Yeah, Ken Yukihiro. So we got more Magic coming up for you from this round. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after these messages.
so.
Wow. Okay. We're debating lunch in the break. Paul thinks he's got about 50,000 meals left, doesn't want to waste any of them.
That's what I said. Yeah, I mean, I think if you just do the math, about 50,000 meals. We were talking about how old I am now, life expectancy, things like that. Speaking of which, happy birthday, Alexander Hayne, today. So, little birthday in the hall. I don't know if he's still in the Grand Prix, but if he is, I hope he opened a nice Mythic for his birthday.
Enjoying one of his 60,000 remaining meals.
He probably has many, many more meals, yeah.
Speaking of many, many more, we've got many, many more matches to bring you. Let's head down to the feature match area and watch a little bit more here of round 11. Riku Kumagai versus Craig Wescoe. Both of these players at 8-2.
Okay.
And there is the Thorn Lieutenant. That was an interesting card for us when we watched the draft play out. That was a first pick eligible card that did not get selected for the first pick. Oh, I'm sorry. Craig Wescoe is actually 9-1. Riku Kumagai is also 9-1.
Yeah, Kentaro Yamamoto passing that Thorn Lieutenant to Riku Kumagai, who I'm sure snapped it up and said, wow, what a clear signal that the green cards are coming to me with a common missing. Certainly no green common you would take over Thorn Lieutenant. Craig, I heard, this was actually his pre-release, so he had not seen Core Set 2019 before coming here to Minneapolis.
And possibly missed out on how good a card like Vinemare is. A card that maybe doesn't look as good as it is when you look at it for the first time.
Right, and Craig in his lane here with an aggressive white strategy.
Getting in with a Rustwing Valken, backs it up with a Psymaster Thopterist, but you've got a couple of really reasonable green creatures, neither of which are being threatened by that size, so Riku's going to get in for at least 2 points of damage here.
One of the things that you'll notice over and over again when you watch the very experienced professional level players play is how often their creatures attack and block. Creatures are attacking and blocking all the time. Riku's attacking with everything every turn. Craig has a Psymaster Thopterist, and you might be thinking if you don't play a lot or you're new to Limited or you're just coming up in the game, I want to protect my Psymaster Thopterist. I don't want to risk getting into combat. I want to get the incremental advantage from the Psy triggers. That is the not the right way to approach Limited. Your creatures attacking and blocking is the most valuable ability that they have, and in situations in which your opponent could plausibly not have a trick, you should put your creature into combat.
The only thing worse than a creature not attacking or not blocking is a creature doing neither.
Right.
So there's a dwindle on the Bristling Boar from Riku Kumagai. Again, loving this scroll here during the feature matches here on day 2. Get a little bit of bigger picture of the tournament, just other than just the porthole that we're able to show you from the feature match booth.
And you're getting a really good idea by looking at the names that are doing well in the tournament, how international this is for a Grand Prix. You're not seeing a lot of the traditional American names with a smattering of foreign players. You're seeing a truly multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-national tournament.
Yeah, lots of Japanese players at the top table when we watch the draft. And for a player coming this far for a Pro Tour next weekend, getting to the site very early is extra important, right? I mean, that just getting yourself used to just the time zone change is essential to being successful at the Pro Tour. I know that that's not something you're able to have the luxury of all that much anymore. But
I wish. It's very important. I found, especially getting into my 30s now, you get to the end of these days, long days of playing this very complicated mind sport, complicated board states, playing against the best players in the world. It's easy to miss small things. Sometimes it's easy to miss big things, and keeping yourself in shape, obviously, things like hydration and nutrition people talk about, but there's nothing more valuable than getting in a few days early to kind of adjust your body clock.
Because interestingly, we don't see a ton of the American pros here because this is not as worthwhile a pursuit for them because there is no Limited at this PT. It's going to all be team constructed. Craig Wescoe, by the way, Sky Scanner into a Thopter token with the help of Psymaster Thopterist. And I'm not sure how many artifacts Craig ended up with in his deck for that Psy, but even if you get 1 or 2 extra flyers out of it, very well worth it.
He has 4 or 5 artifacts, I think. He was showing me his deck, as well as other ways to produce artifacts through Aviation Pioneer and other things of that nature. So he's a light artifact theme.
Well, here's Rabbit Bite, and Thornhide Wolves is going to take down Sai. Just a sucker punch. It's not a fight. Just one side. It doesn't even get to deal a point of damage to that Wolves.
Thornhide Wolves biting something rapidly is fairly flavor on point.
Oh, and there's an Oaken form on the Thorn Lieutenant. Says you're a blue deck. You might bounce this. I would like to at least get a little value out of that if you do. And just attacks with everybody into a 2 1/1s and a 1/2.
And doesn't provide Craig really. He has one intuitive block, which is to triple the Centaur Courser and lose 2 of his valuable creatures here. But Rico, by Oaken forming the Thorn Lieutenant, does 2 things. Diversifies here in terms of having 2 size threats that are very difficult for Craig to deal with. And then second, by putting your enchantment on the Thorn Lieutenant, of course, the triggered ability of the Thorn Lieutenant means that Riku will get some residual benefit if Craig is able to deal with it.
And here we get a look at Craig's hand as he leans forward to figure out what his blocks are.
And he's in big trouble. Doesn't have really the tools in his hand to be able to handle the kind of pressure that Riku's providing. Assuming that he does make the obvious block here, he's going to take 9 damage and drop to 5.
So he has a dwindle for next turn, but then he would go to 1 if he didn't put one of his remaining creatures here at chump block risk.
Yeah. You're thinking if you're Craig, there's a parlay of things that need to happen. First I have the dwindle, chump block. Riku has nothing. I get multiple untap steps.
Riku has nothing is sort of a repeat.
Riku is going to need to have
code.
nothing for 2 or 3 turns for you to be able to functionally do anything in this game.
And I mean, also Craig just doesn't have a lot of operating capital here. Still stuck on 4 lands. I mean, it always feels weird to say stuck on 4 lands. I think 4 lands is about what you can expect. So, a lot of games.
Craig has a lot of the cute elements of his deck, make a stand, divination, that sort of thing, which, when you're flowing, you can find really good spots to cast a make a stand. There's not going to be a great window in the immediate term for make a stand in this game.
So he has dwindled this turn. He's holding an Aviation Pioneer for next turn, which can sort of maybe buy him another turn or 2. Right now, has to block. Lethal damage from the Thorn Lieutenant if he doesn't.
And so much for the nothing plan.
yeah, and it's more than nothing. Ghirapur Guide is a card that's just going to be great against Craig's deck, which has a lot of low power creatures.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Craig's just going to pack it up. Says, I believe Riku Kumagai is going to activate his Ghirapur Guide and kill me. So let's go to game 2 here. Again, both these players at 9-1. And there's Mystic Archaeologist. Just a pretty spectacular card.
Awesome.
This game goes beyond turn 5. Gets in for 2 early. I mean, you talk about optionality.
Yes.
This is the perfect card for that, right? Like, actually does something on the first few turns of the game, and then late in the game, you just bury your opponent with this card.
I would guess the second best 2-drop in the format after the Dryad Greenseeker. It is so strong in that it fills a spot on the curve. It's such a low investment. If you need to trade it off for, say, a Loxodon Linebreaker early in the game, it's happy to do that for you. But it just sits there,
Happy might be hyperbole.
Yeah.
You always, whenever you play this card, you have fantasies about drawing like 7 or 8 cards. But I think that discipline to be able to trade it off.
Yeah, your fantasy, your opponent's nightmare. Your opponent's staring at it thinking, okay, the longer this game goes, the worse it gets for me. So it becomes, as PV would say, a sub game or a mini game right away to figure out, can I get the Archaeologist off the board?
Craig's deck is firing on all cylinders this game. Aviation Pioneer on turn 3 against just a Daggerback Basilisk from Riku Kumagai, and then the Aerial Engineer on turn 4. 4/4 flyer engaged, although a little bit fragile with only a 1/1 as sort of the mechanical crew.
Daggerback Basilisk, the first play from Riku Kumagai, a totally fine card. You're absolutely okay with it. 3 mana 2/2 with Death Touch is absolutely fine. Against white-blue specifically, this is where it is the worst, since Craig can just go up and around it.
Here is Vinemare card. Craig Wescoe, there were a couple of key points in his draft where maybe he could have gone white-green or even blue-green or green-red, but just, again, this was his first draft, he said, in the format, and, did not have an appreciation for how good Vinemare has played out in this format in the first few weeks. So fly over for 5. And there's a Snapping Drake. and the Air Force is fully deployed. Oh, wow, but there's a Blanchwood armor in hand for Riku Kumagai.
Not sure if Riku's going to get the time here to deploy that Blanchwood armor. Putting Blanchwood armor on Vinemare is a very, very powerful threat, and it's going to put Craig under the abyss very quickly. Because of the Aviation Pioneer, which incidentally remains behind, that created the Thopter, and then the cards from Mystic Archaeologist, I think Craig's going to be able to be up to the task of providing a steady stream of blockers for Vinemare to allow his flyers to do the job. So Riku needs to try to figure out, is there any way I can interact with these flyers, because racing doesn't seem to be an attractive option.
Yeah, needs a couple more Rabid Bites, maybe a Plummet.
Rabid Bite, Plummet, Giant Spider, these are the sorts of things that Riku needs. It looks like his hand is filled with auras and other creatures. And those are not the right kind of tools for Craig's explosive start.
He's going to just, again, diversify here. He's going to put the Blanchard armor on the Basilisk.
Wouldn't surprise me at all to see a double block on this Vinemare here with the Pioneer and the Archaeologist.
Yeah.
Okay, wow.
He's just going to chump block the 7/7.
Okay.
He's going to get Death Touch, and there is Thorn Lieutenant.
So Craig thinks that he's going to have enough time to activate Archaeologist and then utilize the cards from it. I don't know if it's going to be that kind of game.
Well, I mean, he could also just plan on getting one use out of the Archaeologist, like chump block and draw, if he doesn't have something that he wants to get on the board this turn. Although it looks like he does have a Wall of Mist here. And a Sky Scanner.
Sky Scanner, so beautiful here. With the Wall of Mist, he's able to do two things in one turn. It replaces itself. It's an artifact insurance to ensure that Aerial Engineer doesn't get stay activated.
Picked out of the air mid-combat. Ugh.
And realistically, the way it looks right now is barring something crazy like a prodigious growth from Riku Kumagai, Craig's very unlikely to die during Riku's next combat step, meaning Riku's going to need something like Root Snare or something of that ilk in order to survive Craig's next combat step. So advantage Craig Wescoe, he's certainly well ahead in the race and looking to even this thing up.
Talons of Wildwood would give him trample if he has that in his deck. But not enough, I believe. And he's just got one turn to find an answer.
Some way to give Goreclaw haste.
All right. So Craig Wescoe has evened things up. One game apiece here against Riku Kumagai. And Kumagai on the play. Kicks things off with the Thorn Lieutenant.
And Riku's deck looks pretty nice to me. I think, people have had different opinions about green. I like green quite a bit in this format, and getting past Thorn Lieutenant at Pod 1 #1 is one of the things that I would most enjoy, I think, in this format, to know what colors are supposed to be.
He's stuck. He stalls out here on 2 lands. We see a card, Declare Dominance, in his hand. Gets to live the Thicket Basilisk dream if he gets his dagger back and Declare Dominance going, but you see Craig Wescoe has brought in Invoke the Divine.
He saw a little bit of white, just Riku touching white game 1, so I think that even if you hadn't seen any powerful auras against a deck that's green-white, you're going to bring in Invoke.
You did see that Blanchwood armor.
Then he saw Blanchwood armor, and certainly at that point, you definitely want to bring in Invoke the Divine.
So there's Psymaster Thopterist, and we're going to get a block here, I believe, from Craig.
This is a little bit closer, so I do like the block, but with Riku being so light on land, there's at least some consideration to taking it, just because what you don't want to do when your opponent is land light is activate the few cards they could have. So you don't want to let him get to use Titanic Growth to trade off for you. Good block by Craig, but at least it would have been more of a decision point than when your opponent is curving out.
Craig's still light on land himself. Doesn't have a 4th. I'm curious that we haven't gotten deck lists this round, so I'm not sure how many lands he's playing. He could be playing a pretty, relatively low amount, maybe 16. But we see he is going to be able to play an Aviation Pioneer here. And now deciding if he wants to attack with Sai, says, nah. Oh, wow. And Riku Kumagai's mana problems are just not getting any better. Kumagai was 9-0 overnight, and he is living the Paul Rietzel nightmare.
Oh, no.
One of you at this table, undefeated players, could go 0-3, something you like to
Yeah.
announce to the table when you sit down sometimes.
It happens.
All right, and there's a fourth land for Craig Wescoe. He's going to fly over for 1 with his Thopter token.
One of the things you were mentioning, though, about Raf Levy, if you're watching at home yesterday, don't feel too bad for the professional players here if they're the ones who are a little bit on the landlight side. They have a Pro Tour coming up next weekend, which obviously is front of mind, so they'll get a chance to redeem themselves pretty quickly. And to whatever degree they're capable of it, they'll certainly want to be saving their luck as much as possible.
Right, getting it out of their system now.
Yes. You have 50,000 meals and about 22,000 mana screws left in your life. So,
all right, so here we see the Aerial Engineer and the Thopter getting in for 5, and now a Johnny's Last Stand. So making it, meaning that if Craig loses one of his creatures in combat here, he is going to get himself a 4/4 Avatar token.
Pretty brutal. Yeah, the downside of a Johnny's Last Stand is that sometimes it's 4 mana go, 4 mana do nothing. But when you're already pressuring your opponent in their landlight and you've presented threats that require immediate answers, even if Riku is able to deal with maybe something like Aerial Engineer, boom, Craig has a backup 4/4 flyer now. So absolutely brutal.
But it also makes it really difficult for him to race on the ground here, right? Like he can't just send in his creatures with a Titanic Growth or something, because he's just gonna be facing down 9 points in the air if he does that all of a sudden. All right, lands are flowing for Craig Wescoe. Might have a little time for Scholar of the Stars here.
And if you were to ask me,
he's got a Gearsmith Guardian as well.
If you ask me in the dark, basically, who would be able to better operate with 3 lands, Riku Kumagai or Craig Wescoe, I would have been able to predict Craig Wescoe. And obviously now finding 4th and 5th lands is going to allow him to press this advantage, and Craig way ahead on board already. So
can I, Craig Wescoe and you both have predilection for similar styles of decks certainly when it comes to constructed. How much of that is like because you want to have a hedge against those games where you're really light on mana, like because you want to be able to just play without having to get to some stressful amount of mana in play, like Shodi Yasuoka has to get exhausted.
Yes.
Right? He's got to get to 7, he's got to get to 8, he's got to be able to cast 2 spells that cost 4.
Yes. Yes, I've never had the experience of having my 7th land come into play tapped, and now I can't cast my spells, basically, right? I think that's part of it. I think that part of it also is that, Craig has a style that he likes. I think for me personally, when it comes to constructed Magic, I don't have much of an ego. I just want to do what's ever going to allow me to sign the match slip in my favor. So if that means playing the deck that's going to punish my opponents for their ambitious mana bases and their clever decks by just going under them, I'm happy to do that. But I played Cryptic Commands the last time they were modern, so I'll play anything. Craig, I think, even more so than me, really likes to stay in that lane.
Way out ahead here is Craig Wescoe. Gearsmith Guardian got him another Thopter last turn. There's a giant spider trying to gum up the works here, but really I think that's just going to make another flyer for him at some point. Make another flyer for Craig at some point.
Craig has to decide here, does he want to spend Dwindle on Giant Spider or just attack in with potentially all of his creatures? Giant Spider could eat a Thopter, but then Riku's taking a huge chunk of damage, and obviously got the Last Stand. So this is one of those that I always say there's no wrong way to eat this Reese's. Craig could use a pretty much a random number generator to make plays for the rest of this game and be in a pretty good spot.
Having ridden the New York City subway system, I can tell you there is definitely a wrong way to eat a Reese's. But all right, so Craig's trying to figure out what to do. Now, is it possible that the play is dwindle the dagger back and be able to get in with the Gearsmith as well? He's like, I'm just going to make another Thopter here. Plays a Sky Scanner. He's going to draw a card. Yield a Thopter thanks to Sai.
Oh my gosh, and he finds a land to be able to still cast Dwindle this turn if he wants.
So puts his summoning sick creatures back. He's gonna dwindle the giant spider, and he's gonna get in with his 3 flyers here. See him leaving the Sky Scanner and the Thopter back. He's like, these are summoning sick. I like that, by the way. I like that just as a reminder. End up with some weird game rule violations along the way.
I think we're pretty close here to seeing Riku pick up the cards. This is one of those situations where if Riku had a Plains out, then potentially something like Plains Cleansing Nova, potentially could be something. Even still, he would lose because of the Johnny's Last Stand. But with 4 forests out, obviously having demonstrated that he doesn't have things like Rabid Bite and Plummet in his hand, there's no kind of card or sequence of cards that could cause him to win the game.
All right, so Giant Spider is going to block and immediately die, and Riku's going to take 2 from the Flyers, but has even more flying coming at him next turn. Plays his 5th land. What does he have?
Declare Dominance would be fun. I mean, it would scoop a lot of things off Craig's side of the table.
Well,
but
it would clear everything except the 6 points of power. It would actually give him a turn.
No, because he would get to trigger the Last Stand.
Yeah.
So.
Oh no.
So even that wouldn't buy him another turn. But it would be fun.
Yeah.
And that's what we come to these tournaments for in the first place. I mean, obviously it's nice to win, and we're all competitive here, but coming for fun.
All right, he's going to play the Vine Mare. I mean, interestingly, if he could have figured out a way to kill one of Craig's creatures there,
right,
that Declare Dominance would have actually
had some impact. Yeah. We don't even know if he has Declare Dominance in his hand, but just.
Oh no, maybe was that game 2?
Maybe it's hard to see.
Yeah.
Riku keeps things very close to the vest. I played him twice at the last Pro Tour.
How'd you do?
I was able to get both the matches against Riku. Tough competitor.
All right. 8 points of flying in the air, and Riku extends a hand. Craig Wescoe gets himself to 10-1, and Riku Kumagai takes his first loss of the tournament. He also goes to 10-1.
And I can very much identify with Craig's mindset right now, this being his pre-release. I played in a tournament, Grand Prix Madison, and that was, I think, Battle for Zendikar, and that was my pre-release as well there. And so for me, I had to just pick an archetype. And for me, I just said, I'm not going to look at any of the cards that aren't colorless. That was my strategy. That wasn't ideal drafting strategy, but that's what I did. For Craig, we saw him take a shock over some cards that we know now are objectively more powerful, but he's kind of gotten himself in his lane, a nice aggressive white deck, and he's still in contention for this top 8
I was gonna say, right,
in his pre-release.
10-1, playing with these cards for the first time. Great job by Craig Wescoe. We've got more Magic for you, though. Let's head down to the feature match area for Quinn Kotecki versus Mike Baranecki.
It's an Eki mirror match.
Yeah. It's an Eki chamber.
Oh, God.
Vampire Neonate is the first play for Baranecki. And he passes the turn. 2 mana up. He's got an activation at the end of Quinn's turn. Quinn's got a Gargoyle Sentinel. And a drain from Baranecki.
Vampire Neonate, emblematic of one of the things that I love so much about Limited Magic. I think that if you were to read that card on the spoiler, maybe play with it the first few times, it's kind of underwhelming. I think now that the format's had a chance to breathe just a little bit, people have realized one of the key cards in black, and certainly in black-white, a rock star common.
I love that experience of like you're drafting it and you're like, God, I wonder if Neonate's good in this deck. It seems like it might be, and then you play it and you're like, oh wow, it is actually really good. Quinn Kotecki gets the beat in for 3 here, but the downside is has no play for his 4th turn. Just sinks some mana into the Gargoyle Sentinel and flies over. But no real pressure coming from Baranecki here.
That's the downside of a card like Vampire Neonate. It's not as cheap commons go, not a spectacular card for pressuring opponents who get off to slow starts.
Mike Baranecki, someone who's won a Grand Prix before, you can see, was the Amonkhet Limited champion at Grand Prix Richmond just last year. A format which had a card very similar to Goblin Motivator.
Right. I can't recall the name, but...
All right, well, there's a Daggerback Basilisk. And Strangling Spores is going to take down the Sentinel at the end of the turn from Baranecki.
Both players just kind of maneuvering here,
yeah, just trying to find their mana. You see a Liliana in hand for Baranecki, and this is a card, again, considered just above Tybalt in the all-time limited Planeswalker rankings.
I think that it's objectively the weakest of the planeswalkers, but there are certainly situations where it could be quite good.
Here we see Skeleton Archer come down, ping Quinn for one. It can go to face. It's any target. And then given haste with the Goblin Motivator, and Quinn takes 4 that turn.
Interesting. So Quinn, choosing not to trade off Daggerback Basilisk for the larger Skeleton Archer, has bigger plans for it, or feels like Mike might end up playing something, a larger creature that he wants to trade. But you can't just take chunk damage forever. It's
I'm always on the lookout for Declare Dominance.
Yes.
See a Bog Stomper in hand for him.
I like the Bog Stomper.
You do?
I just like it. I like Crawworm. I'm interested.
The Kaled Worm, though?
It's, sometimes you just need a 6.
All right, well, now Quinn is going to take that trade. Wasn't interested last turn, but nothing happening for his board this turn really has to. And now we see Liliana. And that's going to let him, Liliana, untouched by death, gets to put the top 3 cards of his library into his graveyard. And if one of them is a zombie card, he gets to make a zombie. Or his opponent, yeah, and drain for 2. But then you can also give creatures -X/-X for the number of zombies you have in play. And then you can also Yawgmoth's Will your zombies every turn.
Mm-hmm. And we see Walking Corpse in Mike's hand, so perhaps a little zombie sub-theme.
So Macabre Waltz returns Gargoyle Sentinel and Daggerback Basilisk, discards a Plummet.
That's a great example for how powerful Macabre Waltz is. Both Sentinel and Daggerback Basilisk trade off 1 for 1, and Quinn gets to turn in a Macabre Waltz and a card that he doesn't appear to be able to use in the situation to get both of them back and put the shields up again. Does need to deal with the Liliana eventually, as presumably, Quinn will be expecting zombies from Mike at some point.
Oh, there is a zombie in the yard. So you see Mike Baranecki lean over to read it. He's going to get to drain 2 and put a zombie token into play.
And there are a fair amount of zombies in this format. The issue.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, it's just the drain 2.
Right.
Yeah.
There are a fair amount of zombies in this format.
He's going to play the 2/2.
So finding zombies to support your Liliana, not the issue. The reason why the deck doesn't normally work out is because most of the zombies are so poor independently. Yeah. It's only really kind of Gravedigger, Graveyard Marshal are the zombies that you'd want to put in your deck. Maybe 2-headed zombie. The other zombies like Walking Corpse you'd ideally not want to have to play. But of course, if you have a Liliana, you're okay having it in your deck.
All right, well, here's a Fell Spectre, and Quinn will be able to start threatening that Liliana, actually. He'll be able to mount 4 power or flying next turn.
And you see what he discarded there. It's is that Open the Graves?
Yeah, that is Open the Graves.
So Open the Graves, a way to make multiple zombies and then get some value out of the minus loyalty ability from Liliana.
Here we see another Walking Corpse in hand for Baranecki. Just drew it this turn. I don't know how many he's playing total.
I love games like this. This is like kind of grimy Magic, right? No one has played anything too good so far, right? These guys are really, fighting with their 6th through 8th picks right now.
and really, that the Vampire Neonate has kind of just set the tone for this game. It's just continued to keep Mike Baranecki's life total healthy and just whittled away a little bit whenever Mike has had some extra mana, which has not been that often.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, Liliana's going up to 7 here. You see 2 lands and an Act of Treason. Quinn nods. Yep.
Worth noting, Walking Corpse in play right now, another one in hand. If those Walking Corpses were to go to the graveyard, Mike could use the 3rd ability on Liliana, Untouched by Death, recast both the Walking Corpses. So Liliana ticking up is a potential late game threat.
Well, here we see Macabre Waltz getting back a Skymarch Bloodletter and a Skeleton Archer. And now I bet you he's going to discard that Walking Corpse, or is it a double red spell? It is a double red spell. He's going to discard the Sparkton Dragon.
Makes some sense. It doesn't appear that there's any chance that he's going to be able to certainly use the triggered ability from Sparkton Dragon. much less be able to cast it. Looks like his deck is fairly heavy on the black, and you notice there are 4 mountains that have already been milled by Liliana. So there may not even be that many mountains remaining in Mike's deck.
All right, so Liliana up to 7. Again, Quinn can attack for 4, but that kind of leaves him in a pretty bad position coming back the other way. He's at 10.
Quinn's just not been able to get anything going really yet.
It looks like he's got a Colossal Dreadmaw in hand, so he may be just that weird green-black spot where you draw none of your ramp and all of your ramp spell, all your spells you're trying to ramp to.
And now Liliana's minus ability becomes fairly relevant. This is the -2. Target creature gets -X until end of turn, where X is the number of zombies you control. 2 zombies in play for Mike. So, when combined with some of the creatures that he has out, could potentially combine to kill one of Quinn's creatures.
Yeah, and here you see Quinn sending in both walking corpses. And Quinn's like, okay, what's going to happen here? Which creature is he going to try to kill with the Liliana? I think he might just be looking to replay them next turn. How about a Root Snare? You talked about some grimy magic.
The old gain 4.
All right, there's a 5th land for Baron Enki. What does that unlock for him now? Skymarch, Bloodletters to play. Another drain, so that's going to get Quinn down to 9. If he doesn't play anything else with his mana, he can drain him to 8 with the Neonate next turn.
One tip for people who are at home and aspiring Magic players when using cards like Root Snare, one good move is to block the Walking Corpse with something like Gargoyle Sentinel and see if your opponent has something like Sure Strike of something of that nature. Try to draw that card out of their hand and then cast the Root Snare. They're infrequently going to fall for that, but if they fall for it every once in a while, it's generally a better move.
So Quinn flashes in Hired Blade. And now he is gonna Lich's Caress a Vampire Neonate. He's gonna fall to 8 in the process. As again, an activation.
But man, a Planeswalker on 8 loyalty, even one kind of as weak as Liliana, is still a major threat here. Quinn just with no ability to pressure Liliana's loyalty at all through creature combat, and so Mike is going to be able to start using that ability. It can just pick off the Hired Blade right now. The Skymarch Bloodletter could attack, and then it could, the Liliana could finish off Fell Spectre. Lots of options for Mike.
All right, looks like we are going to go down. So he's going to pre-combat.
So he shrinks it.
Shrinks it, and then he knows the Skeleton Archer's in hand, so he just picks it up and starts putting it in his graveyard. And then Goblin Instigator is going to give the Archer haste, and both creatures are going to attack. Gargoyle Sentinel not ready to jump in the air just yet.
Remember, Gargoyle Sentinel does not have reach or flying. It's part of the activated ability that lets it attack, also gives it flying. But Quinn lines up with a pretty smart block here with the Hired Blade, both protecting his life total and realizing that Hired Blade can just be picked off by Liliana, untouched by death. So, good block by Quinn.
All right, here's a Sky Scanner. And that's going to unlock 6th land, which is going to let him play a Daggerback Basilisk this turn, but also unlocks Bog Stomper, and I believe, and there's a green card, which may be a Colossal Dreadmaw or something else, but it looks like another expensive green card in hand.
With that Lich's Caress in Mike's hand, though, he's got a pretty attractive Lich's Caress on your Sentinel, minus my Liliana on your Daggerback Basilisk, and bring in the team.
Well, it sounds like it's what he's going to do. Certainly the first part. He's got the Caress mana tapped, figures out he wants to go after the Sentinel, gains 3, he goes up to 25. Yep. Liliana ticks down, Basilisk dies, there are 2 zombies in play. And now an attack for 6. And the Sky Scanner just absorbs 2 of that, and Quinn Kentucky falls to 5 here. Oh, it was so he had 6s and 7s in hand.
Wow.
Gasbark Twins is the play here from Baron Enki. Oh, look at this. A Viashino Pyromancer for a little bit of extra reach. for Baranecki.
And certainly combined with the creatures on the board, that is lethal, as Gaspar Twins can block 2, but Mike is threatening 3 points of damage from the other 2 creatures, plus 2 from the Pyromancer. So Mike has a lethal attack here.
So Mike is going to cast 1 Walking Dead out of his graveyard. He's going to give it haste.
Ooh, extra damage.
Yeah. So two walking corpses, are going to get blocked by the gas bark, but we know that Viashino Pyromancer is going to be able to do those last points damage. Mike Baranecki and Quinkateki shake hands, and that is 2-0 to Mike Baranecki there, winning a game with Liliana.
Yeah,
untouched by death.
I have a strong recommendation for people who draft Walking Corpse and put it in their deck. Also have Liliana and make sure that you draw it, because Walking Corpse is not the kind of card that you generally want to include in your booster draft deck. But we saw how powerful Liliana can be if you have the support for it.
Absolutely,
and Mike did in that deck.
And again, we didn't even get to see a turn where you're just up against like a Boros deck, and you're just trading with your Walking Corpses with Drill Masters and Pyromancers early, and then a late game turn where you just get to play 3 or 4 creatures out of your graveyard with Liliana. So, and
I think that right there, that match was a nice illustration of how different Sealed deck is from Draft. In Draft, even in a format like Core Set, your deck needs a theme. It needs some kind of angle, whether that's artifacts or auras or the Go Wide Boros deck. The green-black deck, a lot of the reason why pro players are kind of steering away from it is that it's just kind of cards. And people, just kind of cards, don't create synergies. You don't get, to get the cheat on rate on cards. And, obviously fell to a more synergistic black-red deck.
Yeah, and one of the things about Liliana is if you do draft it, Walking Corpses, no one's fighting you for that.
Exactly.
They will walk all the way around the table. You could take any other black card and then have that card come back to you. Again, pretty exciting if you get the Liliana. So, anyway, that's it here for round 11. Paul Rietzel, Brandon Marshall. We got more Magic coming up for you right after this with Maria Bartholdi and Paolo Vitor Damadorosa.